and welcome to Tomcat Tales. I'm your host, Mark Maynard, and this podcast will take an insider's look at Ashland Tomcat sports history. We'll talk to some of the personalities who built the Tomcat tradition in every sport. And today, we're talking to the man who epitomizes Ashland Tomcat football. Of course, that would be Herb Conley. Herb, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for those great words and the comments, but I'm not sure they're all that as good as your way you're talking here. But I'm glad to be here, and I hope we can get a lot going and talk about this great tradition we've built over the years, and I think people really enjoy it.
I think so. Herb will help us kick this off by visiting with us for the first 10 episodes. And we're going to take a look at each of the 9 seasons that he coached the Tomcats from 1968 to 1976. And then we'll talk about his Tomcat playing career from 1956 to 58. We'll be starting today with that 68 season. And that year the Tomcats finished 7-3-1 in 27-year-old Herb Conley's first season as head coach. Now, help us to help us set the tone for this. I've got a few events that happened in 1968, Herb. The Vietnam War was in full bloom. Martin Luther King was shot and killed in Memphis, and we know the ramifications of that. Robert Kennedy, he was gaining a lot of momentum as a presidential candidate at that time, was assassinated, and Richard Nixon eventually was elected president that November in 1968. And you might remember some of this entertainment, although you were pretty much engulfed in football, I know. But Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, it debuted on NBC in 1968. The Beatles released on their Apple label Hey Jude, and it was the first big release in the U.S., and it became the longest song to hit number 1 on Billboard's Hot 100. And this one was kind of interesting, I thought. 60 Minutes debuted in 1968 on CBS. Been a long run for them. In sports, the Packers defeated the Raiders 33-14 in Super Bowl II. Elvin Hayes and Houston snapped UCLA's 47-game winning streak in the Astrodome in January. It was the first college game played on such a stage like that, and it really boosted college basketball. The Bruins got their revenge later in March. They beat Houston 101-69 in the national semifinals, and then they trounced North Carolina 78-55 in the finals behind Lou Alcindor, who scored 34 points, later to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Arthur Ashe won the U.S. Open, becoming the first black man to win a Grand Slam tennis tournament. The Detroit Tigers beat the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series, and O.J. Simpson of USC was the Heisman Trophy winner in 1968. So that's just a few things that happened. It really, when you think about that, it really turns the clock back. That's 52 years. So I'm going to ask you to kind of turn the clock back too. Tomcats were coming off their 1967 state championship season, 13-1, and you lost about 24 seniors. And of course, Jake Hallam was the head coach. Moorhead offers him an assistant's job that eventually became the head coaching job after Guy Penny resigned unexpectedly. And how did it play out that you became the head coach of the Tomcats?
Well, after Jake was offered the job first to be an assistant coach, and then the head coach left, resigned out there, and then they offered Jake the job. Well, I remember Jake drove back from Moorhead. And when he came back, he come in the office, and he asked me, he said, "I got some questions for you." He said, I've just been to Moorhead and talked to him about the assistant job, but a big surprise that Coach Penny had resigned, and he was going, they asked him if he'd be interested in the head job. And he said, "I'm not sure if I'll get this or not," but I told him yes. And he told me, he said, "Would you be interested in taking this job?" I said, "Yes." He said, but before that, would you like to go with me to Moorhead? And I said, "Well, Coach, I'd rather take this Ashland job and have it here. It's my home school where I played. My family lives here. My wife's family lives here. So, I would really like to give it a shot. And if you're down there for a long time, I may come down. And be the opportunity may still be there." And he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll go down and see Mr. Shadows, who was the superintendent of Ashland at the time." And believe it or not, he goes down and talks to Mr. Shadows, and he comes back later and he said, "I think you're going to get the job." But he didn't say I was going to give. He said he thought I could get the job. And I said, well, I'd appreciate it. So then they go on and hire Moorhead. They hire Jake. And he takes the job. And then Jake comes back after he takes the job, said, I got it. Said, I need to talk to the superintendent for you. He goes down, talks to him. And then that day, the superintendent called me and told me he thought I would be. He just passed it by the Board of Education and thought I'd get it. And so that's how it happened.
Wow. So you had the opportunity to go with Jake, coach in college, but you decided you wanted to coach the Tomcats. It was, it's where you followed them and you played for them and you've coached with them for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
You knew the players.
Yeah.
You knew who was coming.
Yeah.
So you had to know the cupboard was a little bit bare.
I knew it was quite a bit bare. But the thing about it is, I thought, well, I can. It'll take some time, but I can get this program, back where Jake was having the direction he had it going. Mm-hmm. He won a state championship, and of course, we had a wonderful '67 football team. We had some. Matter of fact, we had about I think around 15, 16 players that were 19 years old. We had a bunch of 19, and that means a lot.
Grown men.
Huh?
They were grown men.
They were grown men. They had beards. They had beards as big as mine, or more than I had. And and the thing about it, I remember talking to Joey Lehman. This was when I was in Harrison County, and he was assistant coach here at Ashland under Rex Miller. And he told me that they were going to be good. He said, we got some good. He said, I had the best sophomores I've ever been around. He said, they're as good as the 58. But he said, they're tough. He said, they're older. He said, they're strong kids, and they really would be dedicated enough to play. Well, he was totally right, because they were good kids. They were older, more mature than other boys, and they were like starting with a pretty decent football team. Not that we were a great team at first. Mm-hmm. we had a few little mishaps with that first year. Mm-hmm. Boyd County beat us, probably one of the worst times I've ever.
34-14.
34-14. Never will forget, Mark, after the ball game. You probably were a young man and going over there. Yeah. I tell you what, they go up and down the field after the ball game. Their band was going up and down the field for about 30 minutes after game. And I never will forget. Coach Allen said, we usually go out the back door and get on the bus, go home. He said, everybody sit right here. We sat there about 5 minutes. He said, well, all right, we're going back out on the field. He took us back out on the field. Made everybody watch him mark that band. And they marched up and down and up and down. The Boyd County people had not left, and they were going nuts. It was awful. And after the ball game, they were more upset about leaving that ball game than they were getting beat at that time. So we was embarrassed. And
that game was at Putnam Stadium.
At Putnam Stadium.
Yeah.
They came in our own home and whipped us good.
Yeah.
And so Jake told him, said, we're never going to let that happen again.
Well, that's interesting. So, of course, that team does 13-1, just dominating people at the end of the year, got better and better, and really just steamrolling people. I mean, they were so strong and big and good running backs, and John Rejunis was a good leader.
Oh, yeah, we had good leaders. John Rejunis, Paul Hill, Les Lyons, Tom Lyons, Jim Lyons. I mean, we had, I could keep naming and naming. Steve Scott was one of the best backs that ever played Ashland. Steve was about 6'2", about 205. He had a great freshman year at the University of Kentucky. He signed at Kentucky. And, of course, Paul Hill and John Rejunis and the other backs seemed to get a little more publicity than he did. But he rushed for like 1,800 yards or maybe more.
Right.
I mean, I can't remember exactly, but he was great.
But of course, 68, you have, I think we talked before, you have a tackle, John Burton, who was back and who started on 67. And you have Mike Johnson, who was, hard-hitting defensive back. He's back, and that's pretty much it as far as the starters go.
Exactly.
So it's rebuild time. So you're taking on that. And how Ashland people are. It's, we're with you, win or tie.
Yeah, I sure do, and it didn't take long to find that out. We started the year off pretty decent. And we weren't a great team, but we weren't as bad as everybody said. What made everybody think we were such a bad team is what Fort Thomas Highlands did.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So what do you remember most about that '68 team? Your first head coaching job?
Well, the first thing I think about, Mark, is I was a little different coach than Jake. Jake was a great coach. He was a great motivator. But even on that team, I did most of the discipline on the field. I didn't do it off the field, but I did it on the field. And then when I took over, I did the same thing, but I did it off the field and on the field. And I pushed him, and I always pushed him hard when I was assistant coach. Matter of fact, after practice, when I was assistant, I'd take the players and run them every day after practice. I took them out one day. We were practicing, and Jake always went up into the gym. That left me and Bill Birch down with the team. And one evening we come in, and he looked at me and he said, "Coach, a little disappointed." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I didn't think you run those guys enough." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry." I said, "But we'll work on that." You wait that next day. That next day, buddy, we ran them. I remember Johnny just said, "Coach, would you get mad? Are you mad at anybody?" I said, "Nope, but just get used to it. It's going to be like that every day, maybe a little more." And I tell you what, they would, after that time, if I tell them run 20 40s after practice, we run 20. They never griped. Everybody ran them hard. Yeah. But then I'd raise it to 25. And I'd ask them one day, I asked them, "How many 40s you guys want to run?" They said 15. I said, "Okay." We ran 15. We went 16. I took about 50. And then the next day, and I'd say, "How many of you guys want to run?" They said 55. And we ran 55. So they didn't know how many they could really tell me. One day, I'm sure we run about 75. But they did not complain. They ran. They started getting some mental toughness about it. And then, one day I said, let's run about 20. They said, "Oh, no, Coach, let's go 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we ran 40. And now they all could run.
So were you able to do you feel like you were able to treat the 68 guys the same way?
Well,
they were expecting it, I guess.
Well, I thought they were. But no, we go to football camp, and about half of them come back, about half, because they're young. And I didn't put that in my head. These guys are younger.
Yeah.
We need to not push them as hard right now.
Yeah.
But we pushed them, and then a lot of them quit. And it wasn't good, and
so then you're getting ready to start the season, and your first game is against Covington Catholic on the road, and of course, the way we know Covington Catholic now, powerhouse in Kentucky high school football, have been for years.
Yeah.
But you were telling me this was actually maybe their first season or one of their early seasons.
It was their first season that I ever know of, because I remember that someone told me, I don't know if another coach said it was Covington Catholic, new school, but they said they're going to be young. You'll be able to play with them. I knew the head coach. I played with him at Eastern. And I asked him about his team. He said, "Well, we're going to be good, but we're young." And I said, "Well, you want to play, get a season going, and maybe we can work it out and have play every year." And he said, "Okay." And, of course, we go there and play the game. They beat us, I think, 7-0.
12-0.
12-0.
Mm-hmm.
And
just not much offense. You couldn't get.
We had no offense, and we just couldn't play. They weren't very good, and we weren't very good.
Yeah.
And that's the way that developed.
Okay. So the next game, your first home game as a head coach at Putnam Stadium, it's against Boyd County. Here's the big rival, and Boyd County was pretty good. I think Charlie Shavers may have been on that team. Yeah. Tom Holbrook.
Yeah, they were good.
They were good, and a late field goal, and you guys lose the game 10-7. So now you're 0-2 as the head coach, but also in that game had an official who suffered a heart attack and died.
Died right there in our dressing room, and while we were in there, he passed away.
Wow, how did that affect?
It did. Our kids it just seemed like the air went out of them, and me too. It's a strange situation to be in with the official in there, and they're saying he looks like he's going to die. And I tried to talk to the team, but I could look at them. They weren't watching what I was doing. They was looking back there.
Sure.
and
Wow.
passed away. And it was a stressful thing.
And then you have to, you come back out, and you're talking about an emotional game anyway, and plus, hard hitting. I mean, I know how those Ashland Boyd County games were. Tom Scott, he was much in the mold of you.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys were tough, and your teams were tough.
Yeah.
And Tom, that was one of Tom's better teams.
Oh yeah, they were good. They were a good football team, and Tom had some good personnel out there. But I always tell everybody, the years that they were better than us,
yeah, we
played right with them. The years we were better than them, we put it on them pretty good. And we always told each other,
yeah.
Tom and I. He told me first, he was an older head coach than me.
Right.
He told me, Sir, if I can ever beat you bad, I'm going to. That's the same here. And that's what we did.
And you had a few of those, yeah. So you're 0-2, which is not a good place for the Tomcat coach to be ever. That's one more loss than the whole 67 season already in 2 weeks. And you got a week 3 road game against Stonewall Jackson, who is the only team to hang a loss on the Tomcats in 1967, won 13-3 in Putnam Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the linebacker escapes me, but I can't think of his name. I can't believe I can't think of it.
I tried to think about that one.
And he had 30-some tackles in that game. Y'all just couldn't block him. He was unbelievable. But luckily he had graduated. He went to Moorhead. Jake scooped him up.
Yeah.
And I think he ended up OVC.
He's an OVC player of the year.
Yeah, he was a good player. But anyway, you go to Stonewall Jackson, never easy to go on the road, especially when you cross the state lines. It gets tougher, it just does. And Stonewall, of course, had, great reputation. You guys, though, you won that game 6-0, and that started a 6-game winning streak. How crucial was a win for the Tomcats for that week for you and the team?
No, it was big. I don't care.
Because nobody was thinking you're going to win, right?
No. Everybody thought we were going to get beat 20, 30 points. And our kids, they shaped up a little bit. I mean, they accepted the challenge. And at halftime, I remember looking at them, and they had that look in their eye. They thought they could play with them. And we did. We played with them the whole ball game, didn't quit. And it was a big win.
Yeah.
Big win.
Only one touchdown game. I don't even know who it was that scored. Maybe I got that here. Yeah, Mike Johnson scored it. And but Mike Abrams, who ended up being a really good running back for you, he had 143 yards rushing in that game. And Johnson, of course, was the quarterback. He probably had a quarterback sneak to score or something. I don't know. I don't know if you even remember. It's been too many touchdowns ago.
But I tell you what, Mike Johnson was a good football player. He was a great defensive back. He could play on every team we had, any place. And Mike was a big leader in that ball game, pushing the other players. He accepted a big role at that time to be the leader of the team. Him and Joe Mantle and Mike Abrams, those three young men.
You look. I know it's hard to look back and think of what if, but if you guys had lost that game, you'd have been 0-3, and the town would have been.
No, it'd been awful. When you're losing, it's hard to get things going. I mean, it's hard for anybody to get their team up, and that's a challenge within itself. And especially if you're not real talented and not have a lot of experience. Players, and we didn't have many people that played much, especially our offense and defensive line, and we lost our best lineman, the first of the year.
Oh yeah, John Burton was injured, right?
Yeah, and
had an injury that kept him out.
Well, he was out, I think, about the first 4 or 5 ball games. Then he come back, played about half of the ball game, and then was out again. And then he come back again and got hurt. And never
so it was
again.
like not having another guy back. Right?
He didn't play a full game.
That's interesting. So now you come back home. Okay, you got that win 1-2, and you got Catlettsburg coming. And I know a lot of people maybe listening to this would think, well, Catlettsburg that's a layup. You're going to beat Catlettsburg every time. But Catlettsburg was not bad.
No, they were. I tell you what, at that time, Catlettsburg played real good football. Had a real good football coach, Jack Eisen. Jack Eisen, a couple of years later, went on and coached with Roy Kidd at Eastern. Roy Kidd didn't take people that couldn't coach. And he was a great coach, Jack was.
Yeah, and, this team's, your Tomcat team at this time even is already starting to develop that reputation of being a good defensive team. Really every game was pretty good to this point defensively. You know, just didn't have a lot of offense going.
Exactly.
But they could play defense.
Well, we played,
Decent.
We'd play. We had kids that would try to hit and hit. They just weren't that big. We weren't that big, and we weren't that real strong at that time.
Mm-hmm. So you play Catlettsburg, and you beat them 13-0, another shutout, which, that's good. That's 2 shutouts in a row, and really have given up 1 touchdown in 3 games in the last 3 games, counting the Boyd County loss. But they kicked a field goal. But this was probably the last competitive Catlettsburg team. I think Jake left after that season.
Yeah.
Or not Jake. I'm sorry, Jack Ison left after that season.
Yeah, he did.
And but this was a tough game. They were good.
Yeah,
they could play.
Yeah, they just aggressive, tough.
Yeah. Do you think you were developing yourself as a defense-minded coach, or how do you consider yourself?
Well, I always felt like I had a good running game and a good defense. We were going to be really good. That was my philosophy, and I probably should have back and then look back. Probably been throw the ball a little more. I'd be the first to say that. But we were pretty successful running the football, and we probably had as good a running game as any Ashland team ever had. And
you threw 152 passes on the season. No, you threw 93 passes on the season, which is less than 10 a game.
Yeah. Well, I threw more than that probably than any year I coached. I had Joe Mantle, Mike Broughton, and Mike threw the ball good. And Joe Mantle, you get it close to him, he would catch it.
Yeah, let's talk about Joe. He of course he recently passed.
Yeah, it's a shame. I heard about that, and of course with this COVID-19.
You can't get out.
Well, you couldn't get out, and you didn't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of things that's happened that you never know about until maybe a week or two, or somebody you happen to see, and they tell you about it. Nothing in the paper.
I know Joe. Meant a lot to you, and he. And vice versa, you meant a lot to him. He had sports was really important in his life, even from the days of him playing Little League. Jim Stewart helped him. David Carter, Bo Carter's dad, mom and dad helped him
exactly
without people knowing.
Yeah.
They provided some clothes or whatever. And I know you were a father figure to him too. I think a lot.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Jake Hallam's the one that, as far as the coach, he really took Joe under his wing at sophomore year, and he got him clothes, he got him food, and he did a lot for Joe. So I continued that.
Yeah.
And with Joe.
Yeah, and Joe, man, I that name, and to me in Tomcat history, because I was like, I'm 11 at this point, watching this team, and that's when you start idolizing these guys, and Joe Mantle was he was a huge name,
Oh, yeah.
He was a huge name. Mike Johnson was, and Abrams too, for that matter.
Yeah.
And, everybody was excited. 67, probably as many Tomcat fans as there almost ever been came to games that year.
Oh, yeah.
They were so excited about that team.
We still, that game, that season, 67.
Yeah.
But, they followed us good.
I'm sure they did.
They wasn't, there was some at the...
I can remember Dad taking me over to games. We went to every time Tomcats played, we were over there, and it was exciting, and I can remember, they used to throw chin straps. Where the kids would go out on the field, and the guys would, you try to get the chin straps, and you try to get the stars, because that was always big. I remember in '67, I got a Johnny Regina chin strap, but that was pretty big.
You still got it?
No, I wish I did. So you beat Catlettsburg. Now you're square, 500, 2-2, and you got to start feeling better about this team. Your next 4 games were victories. You played Covington Homes, which, you go to Covington, a lot of talent always.
Yeah, Covington Homes is still pretty good back there. I'll tell you who coached Covington Homes at that time, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure it was Ohio State. He played at Ohio State fullback.
Covington Homes, though, that game, Herb, your offense woke up. 41-14 was the score of that game. And that game was away, too.
Yeah, it was
you were in Covington twice that season. And Mike Johnson threw for 179 yards, and Joe Mantle had 2 catches for 127.
Yeah.
And like you said, you throw it near Joe Mantle.
He's going to catch it.
Yeah, starving dog's going to get it.
The thing about it, he was not only a good receiver, he could run with it after he caught it.
Yeah.
And, Mike Johnson was a good quarterback.
Yeah.
I'd like to have him. He could have played on any team.
He just didn't have a lot of protection, probably, did he?
Well, yeah.
The line wasn't quite as good. So the next week you're playing Hazard, and that's here, and you wear them out 31-6. This team's starting to get some momentum now. You're starting to you have to.
Yeah, we are. We're playing better. We're playing a lot better football.
That's 3 wins in a row, and then you play Raceland at home and another win. Tough game though, 20-7.
Yeah, we beat them 20-7, and this has always shocked me. And Raceland's always been a good football team. They've always been. Today, they were back then good. When we first got there, they were good. And but they were mad at the coaches and me and the players and everybody. We just beat them 20-8. I asked somebody, why they're so upset. We won the football game. They're going nuts. And they said, well, you've been beating people pretty good. They expect that from everybody. I said, well, you don't always do that.
You mean the fans were mad because you didn't win by more?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're very upset.
So you couldn't even please them when you won sometimes?
No, not me.
Ashland fans are tough, aren't they? They're tough to please. But anyway, that's the 4. You've won. Now you've won. Let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, and you're playing Hampton High. This is your first Little Red Wagon game. And of course you played them when you were a Tomcat player, and you remember how tough it is up there. And I know some of your Tomcat teams. It was always a war with them. No matter where you played them at.
Always.
It didn't matter, and that was the case with this team as well. I guess, was it at Fairfield?
Yeah, Fairfield.
Okay, and they had grass at that point though, probably.
No,
they'd already had turf.
Yeah, they had turf.
Even in '68.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you remember that game?
I remember very well because it was raining before the ball game early in the day.
Yeah.
And Claude Miller, Coach Miller's brother, called down to school and called me. Wanted to call the game off. And they played another time.
This was 68?
Yeah.
This happened? Okay. Yeah, not the 75?
No, this is 68.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, we're going to play. I said, hey, we're going to play. I said, well, I don't care what's doing. And he said, well, he didn't like it, but he said, we're going to play. Thing about it, I was sick. I was really bad sick, and I had a temperature 104. We stopped out here on 29th Street, and there was one of the doctor, this is a team doctor. I can't remember his name, who it was, but we stopped there. I went in, got me a penicillin shot, got back on the bus, and we took off. We go up, and it's poured down the rain. We beat them 14-0.
Yeah, 14-7.
Was it 14-7?
Yeah, that's what I got anyway.
And I think it's 14-7. But the kids played hard. We played a good game, and of course I know what he wanted to. He had all that speed, big. Huntington High is always big, fast.
Yeah, it kind of negated their speed a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It gave us a little bit of leverage.
Yeah. What did you think about playing on turf? That was probably of course, I don't know if you all played on turf the year before even. I don't think you did because Hampton High was.
We played them here.
Yeah, the play was here.
Yeah.
So this might have been the first time on turf for a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Well,
and maybe you too.
Yeah, I never played on.
Kind of nice, I guess. You didn't have to worry about the rain too much.
Exactly, no
mud.
No mud, all that.
Yeah.
Plus, I knew it would slow them down. And it rained. It rained cats and dogs the whole ball game. The whole ball game. I mean, it poured down. And right at the end of the ball game, it stopped. Time went and ran out. We win the ball game, and we're a bunch of happy Tomcats.
And Ashland fans are happy now. They're happier if you can't ever please them, of course. But you're sitting at 6-2, and you've won 6 in a row. And you've beat a good team, Huntington High. You beat some of these teams bad.
I think Huntington High was rated. I'm not sure, but if you look back, I think they was rated in the top 10. In West Virginia.
And it is interesting that the stat highlights from that game, Herb, Mike Johnson threw for 25 yards and Joe Mano rushed for 18. So there wasn't a whole lot of offense.
No.
I mean, that was a defensive game, and you guys got the best of them.
Yeah.
You held them down, of course. And like I say, I look back at this team and to this point, you're sitting at 6-2, 8 games. There's only 2 games where anybody scored more than 1 touchdown against you.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty good defensive team.
Yeah.
I mean, based on that.
Yeah.
Of course, and you alluded to this earlier, and this unfortunately is it seems like what everybody remembers from 1968 season, and that was Fort Thomas, who came to town with a #1 ranking and a chip on their shoulder. They felt like they should have been the state champ in 1967. That they lost to, I think it was Campbell County.
Yeah,
3-0 in a driving rainstorm that kept them out of the playoffs and put Ashland in. Actually,
exactly.
If they win that game, Ashland doesn't even get in the playoffs.
That's exactly how it works.
The '67 season is 10-1 and probably forgotten.
Yeah.
In history.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way. Fort Thomas lost that game. That was you remember that moment too.
I sure do.
And so did they call you to say, "Hey, let's play a game"?
Who?
Did Highlands?
It was already scheduled.
Okay.
It was already scheduled.
It was already on the schedule.
No, I didn't schedule it.
Okay, yeah. You're not going to take credit for that.
No. I have to take credit for getting thumped.
Yeah. So that game, Fort Thomas comes in, like I said, they come in with an attitude. They want to prove they're the best and what have you. They beat Ashland 61-0. It was the worst loss in Tomcat history at the time. It's since been eclipsed. You'll be happy to know.
Yeah.
Maybe
no,
not really.
I'm not happy about it.
They were obviously a great team. I mean,
they were. They were a good team,
and the better team. Yeah. There's no question. But did you feel like they ran it up on you?
Oh yeah. Matter of fact, I never will forget. We're moving to football at the last fourth quarter, about 4 or 5 minutes to go in the ball game. We take it down to 2-yard line. They put their starters back in.
They wanted that shutout.
They wanted the shutout, and of course, it didn't bother me. They were whipping us and then getting beat.
What do you think about teams that do that? I mean, football is stop me if you can, right? I mean,
well, think about it, Mark. I've always felt this way. I would never beat a team. I never did that before. I'll take that back. We're playing. I'll tell you that in a minute when we get to Russell. Yeah. But my philosophy about that: if we're beating a team bad, I'm gonna play as many people as I can. My young kids, I want to get playing time. I played a lot of people, and throughout the years, we got so many people. We average probably about 60 people a game playing, and they didn't play 5 seconds or 2 plays. They got to play 3 and 4 minutes and get some playing time. That's what I always looked at. I'm going to get and their team's happy. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Practice goes good. They'll work hard to get more playing time.
So it benefits you to not run it up.
Yeah.
To get the experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a big thing. And I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, whether college or high school pros or anybody.
You had to walk out of the stadium, though, that night. That had to be one of the low points.
It definitely
of your career, probably.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there's somebody in the stands that night. My wife was down in the press box. The wives always sit right down in there. And there's a guy out there yelling. He yelled all night. And I didn't hear it until one of the coaches came, "That guy out there yelling at you." And I looked up there, and I had a pretty good temper myself. I looked and I saw who it was. I didn't know who he was, but I knew his face. And so as soon as the game was over, kids going downstairs, as soon as the last one went in, I pointed up at him. I said, "I will see you." Well, he took off. He took off and I said, "Somebody stop that guy." Nobody stopped him. And I ran down the middle of the field, tried to get to the door on the gates on the side. He went out that gate. He never came back. He never came back to the game. But I was very upset. And I think I'd done about a 61-0 job on him if I got a hold of him.
I'm surprised Janice didn't take him out.
Well, it hurt her.
Yeah, I'm sure. She didn't want to hear that. Because I'm sure he was being very critical. What, you can't coach?
Yeah,
what's wrong with this?
I don't know what he was saying, but it wasn't
nice. It wasn't a good job coach. Or get him next time or anything like that.
Or how great I was.
Yeah. You probably knew going in, though, this is going to be tough.
Oh, yeah. I knew it was going to be a tough game. And, I thought, we might stay within 40 points.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You knew it was going to be, could be bad.
I knew it could be.
Yeah.
You never know how a game goes. Sometimes they fumble or come in there more,
Going to have some good things happen.
Exactly.
To stay
And some things happened, but they were bad. They were a good football team.
Oh, yeah.
They were quick. I played with guys from Fort Thomas. They wasn't very tough, but they were fundamentally. They'd get up and get in front of you. You just go down like a little cat and jump down right by your feet, and you could get around. They'd not block you, but
get in your way,
and you could get in to a tackle. I never will forget. We was out of Eastern. There was a little halfback. Richard Emmons, and he was coming out to block. Got me one day, and he jumped down there like that. And I can flash back to old Highlands guy. I told him, it was Richard Emmons. I said, "You come back here next time, Richard, and block me like that. You'll wish you never blocked me that way." He come back, boy, and I drilled him. And
but football's the low man a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they weren't always big.
Get leverage.
Yeah. Yeah. And they didn't hit you hard, but they'd get in there and finesse you.
I remember Rockcastle County, the way they played.
Yeah, I never did get to see Rockcastle Cups. I was always there, but
they dove at your feet.
Yeah.
Their defensive line, they didn't worry about making tackles.
Yeah.
But it made such a mess of things that the back couldn't get through, and their linebackers were great.
Yeah.
And they just cleaned up.
Yeah.
They just made every tackle because they were never touched.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what Highlands can do.
Same kind of philosophy.
They're quick. Mm-hmm. And
Highlands always, the games I've seen them, I know what you're saying. They're good athletes. They're they can change direction well. They're fundamentally solid.
Well, yeah.
They're not going to make mistakes. Really, they're not. They're not a team that's going to hurt itself.
Another thing Highlands had over most of the state at that time. They had a lot of people from over the Cincinnati area coming over there and play, because I played a bunch of guys from Cincinnati.
Yeah, these guys couldn't play for Moeller, so let's go play for Highlands.
Moeller or Elder or so
Princeton,
big school. And so they'd come over and play at Fort Thomas.
Yeah, and of course Fort Thomas has one of the.
Finest
I think they have the most championships of any team in the state.
Yeah, I think
21
so.
or something like that.
Yeah, they got about it.
I've been to their stadium several times, and they have a thing where it's really pretty neat for them. The opponent has to walk through this tunnel, and as you're walking through, it's championship banners on the wall. Boom, boom, boom. There's 10 on each side. I mean, you want to talk about intimidating?
Exactly.
Walk through that gauntlet.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you step out on the field, and they're tough, and I don't know. Fort Thomas, they have that name, that reputation that Fort Thomas Islands. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not pretty sure I'm not. That was the last regular season game Ashland ever played. Fort Thomas. They played them in the playoffs a few times, and I think I told you before. The last time a Tomcat team beat Fort Thomas was 1954.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah.
Now they don't play them every year, and they haven't played them probably 20 times. Over
we
that
didn't play them when I was in it. I think we played them when I was a sophomore.
When you're young, maybe. Yeah,
my sophomore year. First game I got to play offense.
But that that was a tough night, for the '68 Tomcats, and one people unfortunately still talk about and remember, and I think it was Ironton that beat Ashland worse than 61 points. I can't remember when. I think anyway, it was when I was covering sports for the Independent. I remember covering the game, and they eclipsed that 61-point margin. Right? Yeah, so there's been a worse loss.
Yeah, well, they've been
in Tomcat history. But anyway, so now the season's not over though. You're 6-3. Okay, it's a loss, but you still have a couple games left, and playoffs were much different then. It was like that game probably took you out of the playoffs, I would say. Mm-hmm. That game would have eliminated you.
Yeah, because Boyd County.
And Boyd County beat you too, so you had 2 district losses, so there's no way, you were going to get in the playoffs. But you still had a couple games left. You have, and there are a couple big rivals. How do you bounce back both physically and mentally for the next week, which the next week happened to be Russell. I don't know, maybe that helped. But can you talk about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, I just went in, I knew everybody was upset. Everybody's mad. I was the worst coach in the world. It was, I just had to get that out of my mind. Told the coaches, I said, we're going to go back and coach just like we always have. Get the kids up and ready to play. And we worked with the kids. We didn't get on them, big deal. We had to go back and start back fundamentals of work and worked on them every day from the time I started coaching Ashland to the time I left. We worked on fundamentals and do the things you got to do to be good, and that's what we did. And of course, Russell wasn't no Fort Thomas Highlands.
No,
but then of course at that time, Ashland and Russell was always a big deal.
Oh yeah,
and their kids, your kids are going to play as hard as they can there. But I don't think our kids were kind of scared when they played Fort Thomas. The name Fort Thomas was a big name. Mm-hmm. Well, now Russell didn't scare our kids, and so our kids were ready to go down there and play. And
yeah, actually, the game was at Putnam, so you got to come back. You got to come back in Putnam Stadium, and let's get a win for your last home game. For the seniors. But
it's a big win for us, really a big win.
Yeah. And again, it was another shutout. It was 28-0, and that happened to be the third shutout that season.
Yeah.
And you take that blemish away of the Fort Thomas game, and really defensively, man, this team had some good numbers.
Yeah, well, we were much better defensively than we were offensively, but we weren't. We had our offensive line was shattered. When from the state championship team.
So did you come back from that Fort Thomas game with injuries, or was it more mental?
Well, no, we didn't have any injuries.
It was just mental
injuries. No,
it was
a mental thing.
Yeah, you got to get over it.
Yeah, you just got to forget. And then we just coached. We didn't get on them. It wasn't no use to chew them out and harp at it. They knew how we felt, and we knew how they felt. It's disappointing to them, and they knew they didn't play as hard as they could, but I'm sure their confidence level after first 2 or 3 touchdowns was totally shattered.
Did you watch film on that game?
Oh, we always watch film.
Even that one?
Oh, yeah. We always watch film, go over. We looked at, matter of fact, I went over it a lot to see how those, after the year was over, I always watched it in the basketball season film, and I'd look at that a lot to just see how they were blocking us and the things they did. And
try to learn from it.
Learn a little bit of what they were doing and how we could have attacked them a little different. And if we see this kind of way people play, we have to learn how to adjust to those things.
Yeah.
And but first of all, before you adjust anything, you got to have some people that can really play.
Yeah.
And our biggest problem, I don't think our kids, we had good kids. The kids were good, and they gave good effort a lot of time. I just think that they just really, some of them never played much, and they just weren't quite ready for that kind of competition.
So, like I say, you beat Russell 28-0. Mike Abrams rushed for 105 yards, and Mike Johnson passed for 64. Good balanced attack, and really controlled that game, start to finish.
Mike Abrams was a good running back. Of course, Mike, a lot of times during the years, he had some back problems.
He carried for 735 yards and 3 touchdowns, but only carried 163 times. So he carried about 12 times a game, 13 times a game.
Well, as I say, he had some back trouble.
And Mantle was a good running back that you used kind of secondary.
I used Joe.
Wherever you needed him, right?
I used him at halfback. I used him at ends, both ends, fullback.
Right.
They would.
So that sets it up for the last game of the season, and it's tough. You got another rival. You got Ironton, and it's over at Tank Stadium. Tough place to play, as you well know. You've played many times over there. Got a lot of wins over there, actually. This game, I think Ironton was pretty good. I think they were kind of like Ashland. They were average, average to good team. And that game ended up, Herb, probably the only game in the last time this score has happened probably was 0-0.
Yeah. Scoreless
game. What do you remember about that game?
Well, I don't really remember a whole lot about that ball game, but I do know we played it over there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember when we were playing over there that we were banged up. We had some kids.
Just from the tough season.
Yeah, and we were kind of beat up pretty good, and we just didn't go over there. And I'd say both teams played about the same, and we were probably pretty equal. Yeah. That's probably how it ended up 0-0.
Neither one of you moved the ball.
No.
But at the same time, that's the fourth shutout for that team. In the last 2 games in the last 8 quarters of the season, they don't give up a point.
Yeah.
So that they finished the year.
By looking at it, you'd say that's a pretty good little defensive team.
You would, except that 61, and you're just like, overall a respectable 7-3-1 season, though. Your first season, it was a lot tougher to make the playoffs back then than it is today when everybody's in. All that. You know how that works. Only the very few, only 8 made the playoffs. In each division, and there was only 3 divisions at that time. 3 classes.
Well, yeah, Mark. You had to win your division,
and you couldn't lose.
You couldn't lose.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. 1971, we don't lose a game in the state of Kentucky. And
still can't get in.
That's
crazy.
You think about that. And that's one of the best teams that played it, actually.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to them.
Yeah.
So that was your first season. How, was it satisfying to you when you look back on it?
I'm like the fans. Everything was satisfied to me except the Highlands.
The one game.
That one game. And I tell you what, in 1972, the year going into 72, after I finished the 71 team, season, I called Fort Thomas Highlands, won a game with them. And they said, well, we filled that. I said, yeah. And he says, what did you fill? They said, we filled that today. Well, I said, okay. I just called one. This Herb Conley. He said, and I knew he played quarterback here at Kentucky. I forget his name. But anyway, about 3 weeks later, I'm looking in the paper and I see where they still got an open date. Well, I call him back. And he said, Herb, I'll tell you what, I know you're upset with getting thumped as bad as you did. He said, I was assistant coach that year, and I had nothing to do with that. He said, but we still got the date open, but we don't want to play you.
Wow.
So I said, well, okay. I said, one of these days we may meet. And I was hoping in 75 we'd get him.
Yeah.
Or see if 74.
Dixie Heights ended up winning. In fact, I think they may have dropped to AAA even at that point in 75.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so you couldn't have played them. I'm pretty sure they did because Russell ended up playing them a lot in the playoffs.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm. But anyway, you never played Fort Thomas. You never met them in your Tomcat career again, your Tomcat coaching career.
I tried to.
So one last thing, and I don't want to short anybody, of course. You didn't have these guys now. They got 10, 12, 14 coaches. You had 2 that we listed, and that was Bill Birch and Shorty Blanton.
And Glenn Riddle.
So you had 3. That was your coaching staff, pretty much. And I know you've told me before about Bill Birch, and he's just a bird dog scout, right?
He was a great coach, and he was the best scout I was ever around. I mean, college people or what, he could scout a game, come back and tell you every place they're going to run the ball and all that. Just a matter of you stopping them.
So he had the plan.
Oh yeah, he I always got met with him. He'd tell me where they're going to be running the ball and things, and tell me what plays to run and where to look.
Wow. So what did he tell you about Fort Thomas?
Well, he told me they were going to be tough. He didn't go into detail.
He didn't sugarcoat it.
No. He told me, Coach, we'll have a tough night, so get prepared.
Well,
he said, I'm not going to try to tell you where we're going to run the ball or how we're going to stop them because it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a tough game, but I didn't know it was going to be like that.
Yeah. Well, this was the first season. This is our first episode, and Tomcats in 1968 they go 7-3-1 in Herb Conley's first season as head coach, and that was 52 years ago. Hard to believe that it's been that long, but I hope you've enjoyed this look back on the 1968 season. We're going to be doing every year. So if you played for the Tomcats from 68 to 76. You're going to want to tune in to these podcasts because this was great today. I think we learned a lot about that 68 team that maybe we didn't know. And I will close with one other thing. You had some interesting guys on that team who ended up doing some pretty cool things. You had, Dave Hagerman was a sophomore quarterback on that team.
Dave Hagerman was tough.
Yeah.
Dave Hagerman could have played on any football team I had started at defense.
Wow. He was.
But offense, he couldn't throw the ball 5 yards.
And, of course, he ends up being a judge, and a great one. He's got the building named after him.
Yes.
You and him are the only people I know of that have big monuments after you, and you're all still alive. So, that's a pretty cool thing. And, I look back on this roster. Paul Dehart was another one. He's a good friend, a good Tomcat follower. I mean, he's big into this. I know he would listen to this. Joe Mantle, of course, was a name from from Tomcat past that that was really good. Larry Lineback.
Larry Lineback.
Yeah, was Lineback. I'm sorry. Yeah, was he was a Courier Journal All-State honorable mention end.
Defense.
Defensive end. It's interesting looking back on the roster, and we've talked about Mike Abrams, of course, a lot, and Mike Johnson, who you obviously thought highly of as well. But you're now we're going into 69 now, and we'll it'll be interesting to see how the Tomcats do that season for people that don't know, and as the years progress. But Herb, it's been great catching up with you, and we'll do it again here real soon.
Sounds good.
All right.